mourning in Torah doesn't mean feeling sad. Grief in Torah doesn't mean being in pain. The Torah tells us what the soul of the departed is going through. And we, being empathetic with the departed, share its experience. Let's look a little bit about how this thing actually works. What is hell? A guy goes on a long journey to seek his fortune, because at home he's not making a living. So he sets sail to find some fortune elsewhere. He's shipwrecked on an island. He wakes up on the beach, and there are diamonds everywhere. He gathers them up and rushes into town and wants to buy something with these diamonds, and they laugh at him. They say, diamonds aren't worth anything here. They're all over the beach. Here, what we use for money is onions. They're scarce. So he settles into this new life, earns many onions, becomes very wealthy, multi-onionaire. And after many years, he thinks it's time to go home. He builds himself a ship, loads it up with all of his wealth, all his onions, and sets sail for home. Getting home took over a month. By the time he gets to the harbor, the onions are getting a little odorous. He pulls in, can't wait to show his family how successful he's become. And they take one look at this cargo, and they say, this thing stinks. This is horrible. What did you bring here? We don't barter in onions. Same is true with the soul. The soul comes down to earth. In heaven, it knew about diamonds. On earth, he comes down and he says, the soul says, let's do godly things. Let's amass a lot of godliness. And the body says, we don't deal in godliness here. Here we deal with tomatoes, potatoes. Soul gets used to it and eventually amasses a great wealth of onions, potatoes, tomatoes, and such. Now the soul leaves the body and goes back to being a soul, and he comes to heaven and it smells of onions. That's hell. When a soul comes back to the world of souls and doesn't smell like a soul, that's hell. The fires of hell in which a soul burns has got to be the fire of shame. It burns with shame. It's the only fire that a soul can feel. So the shame can linger for a maximum of 12 months. Being in heaven for 12 months, that smell wears off because it's only physical. How long can it last? By the end of the year, after 12 months, the soul is clean. It's a neshama among neshamas. It's now sitting in heaven. Those 12 months are basically a cleansing, refreshing process where the soul peels itself away from the memories, the sights, the smells of the physical world. We say Kaddish for 11 months because that adjustment is eased and made smoother by our Kaddish. We say it only for 11 months because we don't want to insult any soul by suggesting that it needed the entire 12-month cleansing. But just in case it did, we say 11 months. After that, the soul is at peace comfortable in heaven. Now, some souls come back to heaven after 120 years, and it's as if they never left. That's called going straight to Gan Eden. The mourning period, which I think is very fascinating, there's the 7 days, the 30 days, the year. In the 7 days, the first 3 are more intense than the last 4. Why is all that? Mourning in Torah doesn't mean feeling sad. Grief in Torah doesn't mean being in pain. The Torah tells us what the soul of the departed is going through. And we, being empathetic with the departed, share its experience. When it's in great pain, we grieve intensely. When it's getting more comfortable, we grieve a little less. When it has become completely comfortable, then we stop grieving. Because grief is not about us. Grief means don't let go of the soul, remain in touch, and share the soul's experience. So the Torah tells us the first 3 days after a soul leaves the body, that wrenching change is most intense. The next 4 days is a little easier. At the end of 7 days, it has settled in to its experience in heaven. And that's why you are obligated to get up and put an end to the Shiva. You know that famous joke about a guy who brings home a non-Jewish girl to his traditional mother, and he's very worried about her reaction. His girlfriend is an Indian. Her name is Running Deer. And he has to introduce her to his mother. He brings her home and he says, "Ma, this is the woman I'm going to marry. She is Running Deer." And to his surprise, his mother was very calm. She said, "Hi, glad to meet you. I'm Sitting Shiva." Sitting Shiva means 7 days and not an hour more. Because if you start to grieve on your own, if you're not reflecting what the neshama is experiencing, this is not the real grief. This is feeling sorry for yourself, which is fine, but it's not a Jewish ritual. It's not a mitzvah anymore. At the end of 30 days, the soul has made another step into settling into heaven. And so at the end of 30 days, we lighten our grief even more until the end of the year, and by then the soul is in heaven. What are you grieving? So it's an amazing and beautiful thing that sitting Shiva and mourning the death of a loved one is really in consideration of their experience, not feeling sorry for ourselves. The Rebbe said something really emotional and profound one day. He said there's a custom on Pesach, when you ask the 4 questions, you preface it by saying, "Tate, ich will bei dir fragen 4 Kashes." You address the questions to your father. And the tradition is that even after your father has passed away, at the Seder, you continue to say, "Tate, ich will bei dir fragen 4 Kashes." And the Rebbe became very emotional when he said this. He said it's very painful for a soul in heaven to get back in touch with what's happening on earth. But when your child wants to ask you a question, then you will do everything to hear him and give him an answer. So this custom of addressing your Father after he is in heaven means that it is worth whatever pain the soul has to experience to reconnect with earth in order to answer your child's question. We have a Sunday night program for VIPs that you might be interested in. It's informal, it's questions and answers, it's conversation. It's really relaxed, it's really pleasant, enjoyable, informative, and kind of community-like. It's a Sunday night program. There's a Wednesday morning program for the VIPs, and there's a Wednesday night program. All of it just conversation, casual, laid back, unscripted. So join us, take a look, click the link below and see which of the three suits you best, and join us for some enjoyable conversation.